Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Pass the Barb. This is the #1 outdoor podcast in the world. I'm not sure how you got here, but you must be smart, right, Sobe?
Adam is not lying. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a freaking banger tonight. Holding down the fort is the host of the podcast, Adam Bartusek, and myself, and we have a banger guest. And like Adam said before, I want to say this is week 22 or 23 that we have held the #1 spot for the #1 outdoors podcast on, I think, for sure Spotify, but maybe other streaming platforms. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam.
Yeah, that's what I believe. And I mean, if you're new here, like, congratulations, man. You just stumbled into the best hour and a half of your life. We're going to have a lot of fun. And yeah, you can get on. It's cool to get on the bandwagon. That's totally fine. We accept that. We're very
PTB
cool with
Nation
that.
is half underground, half shenanigans, half technical, and probably the rest BS. And that's what makes it beautiful. So welcome to the show. And if you're not yet following us on socials, please follow us on socials, because that's where a lot of other stuff goes down, and that's where we really interact with a lot of you folks. So yeah, that's a miss if you're not following us on socials. That's where we get a lot of our bits from. So it's a good time. So either way, Adam Bartusek.
Yeah, we are here. We are without our boy Ryan Pinkala. I don't even know where he is. I think he's probably going on some sort of fishing adventure. But before we dive into that,
no, hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan's doing some sort of a rodeo cook-off. It's where they go to the rodeo, but there's also some sort of cooking involved. So I don't know if he was
this that thing, that community service thing he has to do for that ticket he got like 2 months ago?
Well, that's one thing that, like, he could have, like, it vouched for it or whatever. I'm at a loss for words. Like,
yeah, it counts for hours. Yeah,
it counts for hours. So he had to, like, do half of, like, clown show, or he's the clown for the bull, and then he's going to do some cooking off to the side. But where was it at? In Wisconsin?
I did Chippewa Falls.
Yeah, I think Chippewa Falls. So he's doing some, like, clown rodeo cook-off deal for community service. But either way, Ryan's gone tonight. Now, Adam, roll into that ad read right now.
Yeah, okay. Yep. And Pass the Barb is once again brought to you by Onyx Fish. Onyx Fish is a great partner of ours. We use them all the time, been with since day one. If you're unfamiliar with Onyx Fish, it is an incredible app platform to help you make some of the best fishing trips of your life, I would say. We know a lot of people out there don't get to spend as much time as we do in the outdoors. So maximizing your time when you're out there, getting out on bodies of water that have a lot of great fish in it, or if you just want to harvest a bunch of them or target a new species, you're able to do that with all their fisheries data. You can get there quickly because they can tell you all the ways to actually access a lake. They have weather. They have a bunch of cool new features, including fishing hotspots that show up shaded on the lake. It's verified catch data from reliable sources to kind of get you off on a start so that, yeah, you can go pursue your own adventures. We use this all the time, whether it's open water or ice fishing. I know a lot of people use it a ton of ice fishing. I think there's a lot of people who explore more ice fishing. I know it's August, but man, I hate to say it, that is coming around the corner. So you might want to invest in your Onyx Fish subscription, start messing with it. Use code Crappie for 20%. It is 20% off. I did look actually the other day.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I don't know, like we said, Sobe's code, you can just start chucking stuff in there. It might work.
Yeah, you could use either code Crappie or code Sobe or code Sobe20. Like, it all works. Like, just get it. And outside the ad read, like, huge shout out to Onyx Fish. We're really excited to have them as a sponsor on this pod. We have kept this pod as half passion project forever, and we've turned down actually like a lot of different partnerships because, like, we don't use them, but Onyx Fish is something we have used for years before they reach out to us. So we were really excited to partner with them, and it's a great app. Like, my favorite feature, if I had to say one, it'd be the filter feature. And it's just like, you can go through, play with the filters. Doesn't matter if you're looking for species, if you're looking for abundance, if you're looking for trophy fish of that species, like Adam and the boys chase a lot of crappies. You can literally just in the filter feature, type in crappies, trophy lakes. It's connected to the DNR fishery surveys. Boom. they now have a list where they can go for trophy crappies, and you can obviously do that with whatever species you're targeting. So thank you, Onyx Fish. Huge shout out to them.
Yes, sir. Okay. So Sobe, I would say let's dive into what's happened the last 24 or 48 hours, but a little behind baseball for all you fans of the pod. We recorded the last one you listened to last night, so I know everything that happened. Like, we don't really have anything new. It was, guess what? It was hot. I edited more Champions Tour videos. I don't know if anything changed for Sobe. I'm assuming not.
I was on the computer all day as well, just like on my straight edit grind.
Yeah. Now we're here on the computer doing an interview. So exciting.
but it'll be cool because our guest tonight is a legendary multi-species angler with an intense focus in walleyes. But we're going to start this pod off by giving a little preview of kind of the northern swing coming up here to kind of round out the season for Bassmasters. The Bassmasters are heading to Lake Champlain. Give them a quick rundown of Lake Champlain and what's going down.
Well, we haven't really gotten to talk about this much lately. There hasn't been a lot of bass talk on since I would say Gus, like in terms of professional, since we had Gussie on a while ago. But Bassmaster Elite Series heads on their northern swing to end the year. That time of year again, where you're going to see a bunch of smallmouth getting caught. But new this year, I think, dude, when they announced the split forward-facing sonar rule for Bassmaster, the one thing I was like, this is going to be really cool for is when they got up north. I was personally really hoping that both Champlain and St. Lawrence would be no scope, just because I thought it would be so intriguing. But either way, I'm really happy that so Champlain will be no forward facing sonar. I believe St. Lawrence, Lake Ontario, they'll be able to use it. So yeah, they're heading to Champlain. I mean, it is a bucket list fishery for me. I want to go out there and fish something really bad. At some point in my life, whether it's a Toyota series or whatever, I just want to go fish a tournament on that lake because it looks so cool. And every Minnesotan who goes out there and comes back is like, it is incredible. So, yeah, they're heading out there. So that'll be basically in a week. It's in like 7 days from when you guys are hearing this. It'll basically be kicking off. But I think it is going to be really exciting without forward-facing sonar. What about you, Sobe?
It's a dynamic fishery that obviously the smallmouth are abundant, but the largemouth play, dude, and they're big. There is beautiful smallmouth water out there, and then there is vegetation and grass and buckets to be had. So it's like, especially with no scope playing, like guys are going to find different stuff and fish their strengths, whatever they fish. And it's going to be, I don't know. There's AOI races going on. There is bragging right races going on. There's old heads that want to crack them. There's young dudes that go, we can fish without it. So it's going to be freaking really cool. Like it's going to be sick.
I'm really hyped for Champlain because I feel like this fishery. So before forward-facing sonar really took off here, like, and I also don't have an issue watching forward-facing tournaments. I think they're super entertaining. But this was a fishery where, like, I remember watching Felix throwing a spy bait by buoys out in 100 feet, almost winning. I remember Fighter flipping milfoil, almost winning his first event. I remember Fighter flipping shallow wooden docks and almost winning his first event. I remember guys catching smallmouth out in the middle, or like Polinick fishing the boulders. And then I also remember like Fighter throwing a hair jig around sailboats. Like I remember that too, like out in no man's land, and they're just hanging under sailboats. Like, and then you got the largemouth down in Ticonderoga. There are so many storylines at this fishery. And the one thing that's kind of sucked the last couple times they've been there with forward facing is all those stories have gotten taken away because the inland sea is where it's at. And if you're not fishing the inland sea for floating smallmouth, like you're just not going to compete. That's the way it seems. So I'm really excited because, dude, it could get one smallmouth, it could get one largemouth, it could get one mixed, it could get one down in Ticonderoga. Like it could get one so many ways.
I want to see, dude. I hope we see a gangster move of somebody with a mixed bag of like day one, they shoot for the moon and they go, I'm going for largemouth, and they crack like 21, 22 pounds. And then they just got smallmouth in their back pocket and they back it up. Like I want to see somebody have that goes into there and goes, I ran 4 different patterns for 2 different species of bass and I pulled off the dub. Like that would be so sick. It'd be awesome.
I just want to, dude. I want to see Fighter bring home a Champlain trophy. Like you just gotta know. I feel like that's like one he wants probably more than any. I mean, obviously a classic, but like in terms of an event and a location, I would think he wants that one because he's taken second there, I think twice now, maybe more. Him and that lake get along really, really, really good. And he is the best at mixing those largemouth with those smallmouth. And I'm just excited about it, man. I'm excited
Especially
to see
with
Seth
greasy
flipping
foil
milfoil
present.
and
Like
docks. Yeah.
it's gonna be sick, dude. He's gonna absolutely just nuke docks, nuke foil, and then he's gonna be like, I know how to catch a smallmouth too. Like I'm ready.
Dude,
Like
it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be sweet. So, anyways, fantasy fishing wise. So we'll dive into this real quick for all of you that are doing fantasy. Sobe and I have buried the bridge a little bit on him still welching on his bet. So we won't dive into that too much, but I still am in protest, just trying to get the worst lineup absolutely possible. So I will go through that. I will tell you who I am picking. I would not recommend you picking. There is actually a fair amount of Elite Series anglers that listen to this podcast, and we hear about it fairly often when we go through this segment. And I'm sorry if I pick you. It's not personal. Blame Sobe. But anyways, okay, Bucket A, Sobe. Who do you got?
Bucket A, dude. It's tough to bet against him, and I think he'll be able to back it up. He is leading the Angler of the Year race. That is Trey McKinney from Illinois. How about you? Who do you got for Bucket
A? For my do not select, I think they will have a bad tournament, actually. I think this is probably a hot take, but I'm going to take Jason Christie.
Ooh, I could see that. Like, and he already got a dub. Like he's chilling. Like
he's already got 2 dubs this year.
Yeah, like he's chilling, dude. He's just up north having fun. But maybe that
so
plays to his favor. Like maybe
it could play to his favor. It's just I think this lineup here is fairly stacked with people who will be able to catch him a bunch of different ways, and that was one. But however, he has 44.5%. If you want someone who potentially probably is going to do really good without forward facing now, Corey Johnson's going to whack him. I mean, he is going to whack the absolute piss out of him there. It's going to be awesome.
All right.
Okay, Bucket B.
Bucket B, dude. It would be sacrilegious if I did not pick the llama himself, Seth Fighter from Newmarket, Minnesota, dude. Like we said before, him and that lake get along like peas and carrots. He's going to smash them. And I think he wants it. So Seth Fighter.
Yeah, if you don't pick Seth, that's just crime against humanity, I think, on this one. Especially he's not the favorite in that bucket, which is kind of crazy. So my pick for, once again, I don't think they're going to do very good. Brandon Lester. Just don't think it's your week, Brandon.
I could see that.
Nothing personal. Okay, Bucket C.
Bucket C, I have Taku Itu. His history there precedes itself. He is Mr. Smallmouth Disneyland. He's going to do well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that. A guy who I think is going to have a bad event here, Chris Zaldane.
I could see that.
I think he is going to go, I'm going to throw my swim bait for largemouth all day long, and I think it's going to work on day 1, and I think it's really not on day 2. I can see that. I can see this happening. I can see this one. I can see the script. So I would avoid Zaldane at this one. Bucket D.
Bucket D from Cooperstown, New York. Almost a local per se. I'm going with Kyle Patrick, dude. I feel like he was mad at him. He had a rough start at the beginning of the season. But he's calmed down, and we're putting here in his backyard. So I think he's going to crack him.
Okay. Bucket D for who not to pick. So I am slightly worried about this one. If the largemouth are going to play shallow, I think he's probably might whack him. But if it's a smallmouth game, I'm not worried about it. That's Brad Watley. I think Brad's incredible when fish are shallow, but yeah, I just would not. Once again, this is Sobe's fault. I would not pick him to do well at this one.
All
Bucket E,
right.
Sobe.
Carrying home the team, Bucket E from Canada. He was born with a smallmouth in his arms and a Monster Energy drink in his mouth. That is Cooper Gallant. I think he is going to light it freaking up. He is well versed in smallmouth and in largemouth, but I think the whole no scope smallmouth thing, I think he's going to shine, and I think he's going to figure out those old tactics that once played there and absolutely plow.
Good pick. One to round out my who not to pick. Brock Rankenmeyer. He is a rookie.
Yeah.
And he is from Table Rock area of Missouri where there is no weeds. I feel like that's going to be tough on Champlain where there's a ton of grass and then there's smallmouth in the middle of nowhere. However, he could end up doing really well because of the whole smallmouth in the middle of nowhere and the Table Rock thing. But yeah, I just don't. I don't envision that one. I do think Coop's a very good pick for this one though.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeper pick for you in Bucket E, Aaron Jagfeld. He is from Michigan. Incredible on St. Clair in the Great Lakes with smallmouth. He will have a good event here. I would be very surprised if he doesn't. So, and he's a rookie this year. So look for him to have a good northern swing in general. What do you got for weight, Sobe?
I've got like, I think one of the days it's going to take like 22 pounds, and then the rest of the days it'll be a little bit less. I've got 83 pounds total. Maybe that's a little light. I don't know though.
Yeah, that's actually a little heavier than I guessed.
You think? Okay.
I am going 80 pounds, 2 ounces, and that is because of the no scope factor. I think that we're going to kind of get back to the Champlain we've seen before, where if a guy cracks 20, he like cracked them.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a lot of 17 3/4 to 18 and a half bags because there is so many of that caliber fish in there. So I just think it's going to be right about around a 20-pound average to get in. I think on day 4, all 10 will have a shot to win. Like, I do not think there's going to be a distance. I think it's going to be like old school tournaments up there where that last day everyone's separated by like a pound, 15 ounces, and it's anybody's ball game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we got there.
Like
Elite Series kicking off. We'll preview the St. Lawrence River on the next one. But yeah, Bassmasters back. They're up north. And get your lineup set, folks. This is your warning.
I'm excited. This is the northern swing of the Bassmasters. This is where guys either trip out or they rise to the occasion. It's fun.
Yes, sir. Okay, Sobe. So now we ready to roll into our guest?
Oh, our guest is here? He's
yeah.
Okay. All right, let me look at I've got a media sheet here from our coordinator, and it's I guess his first name is Tony or something. All right. Yeah, should we okay. Yeah, let's bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we have one of the most respected anglers, not only in Minnesota, but the Midwest. He has captivated thousands of people. He has competed at tournaments at the highest level. He is a renowned guide. He woke up at birth on Mille Lacs Lake with a walleye in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the one, the only, Tony Roach. Bring him in. Bring him in. Come on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you doing, Tony?
Oh, good, man. I just ripped back from Lake of the Woods, so life is really good right now. My hands are really sore from handling fish, which is good.
That's good problems.
I just unpacked all my gear, repacked for guiding. I know it's going to be a disappointment tomorrow, like going back to Mille Lacs after being in, Shoal Lake and ripping around Lake of the Woods, and like every other corner, there's giant pike and muskies, and it's just chaos up there. And it's a special place on the planet. Everything that swims. Like, we had customers, people that sponsors through Ronchero Productions and stuff. They all go up to Wiley Point, and they've been doing this for like 31 years. Ron and the crew been going up there, and they asked me to come last year with the Rapala guys, and I just couldn't make it work. I would have had to like clear my schedule, and it didn't happen. But I love that part of the world because I spend a ton of time up by Kenora. I used to guide at Flag Island Resort when I was in college. So, you know, that whole world is like one of my favorite places to be, just because you can catch smallmouth, walleyes, pike, lake trout, like all on the same stretch if you want. And so, yeah, when we went up there, there's like different groups that we fish with. I'd be like, hey guys, what do you want to target? And they'd be like, oh, we want to go catch a bunch of eater walleyes and have shore lunch one day. And then the next day we'd be like, okay, well, let's rip up to Shoal Lake, and we'd hammer on walleyes on one hump, and then we'd get over and I'd be like, oh my God, you guys grab the rods. There's smallmouth all over the top of this rock, you know, and we just bang, 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 and, you know, it's just constant fish catching. It's so chaotic all the time. And then, you know, I always have like a big swim bait tied up because there's tons of giant jacks everywhere, huge jacks like around every corner. So like, I don't get as geeked up about seeing the muskies. I just don't. I think there's a ton of muskies everywhere up there. But you know, when the muskies are sitting there during the day anyway, they're sort of lethargic. And with the full moon, the guys were going out and cracking them at night. And they were doing quite well actually at night. In the evening, I know that first night, you know, like the moonrise was like at 8 o'clock. Well, everybody caught fish within like that 5 to 10 minute range. Like they all looked at their watches and, yep, I caught mine at 8:03. I caught one at 8:10. It was all within like 15 minutes of the moonrise. And all that's cool. Like I do geek out a bit over big muskies, and I'll throw at them on occasion, but it's actually the big pike, those big jacks that are roamers that are up high. I love those things. I think they're just such a special species, whether you're on Lake of the Woods or Mille Lacs or wherever. I almost always have like a big hair jig or swim bait or something tied up where I can crack those things. Matter of fact, those big freeloaders, you know, those 7-inch freeloaders, those pike can't lay off those things. But it's crazy. Like I would throw a freeloader out there, and the amount of walleyes I caught on that thing too, or pike, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, but everything eats that thing. You wouldn't think that.
How big of a freeloader were you throwing?
7-inch.
You're throwing the big one, like
The big one. Oh yeah, and it's tied up all the time, and just chuck it out there. If you get it within, I don't know, 10 feet of those pike, I mean, you could just see them turn around on it. I had a few muskies turn around on it, but it was like a lazy follow. If you see that lazy follow, you're like, it's a muskie on that point. Most of the pike were suspended or they were out off the edge. Most of the muskies were up on the structure. I mean, I saw one last night it was up in 4 feet of water. And so most of the muskies that I saw were really shallow. Not to say there's not muskies roaming out in that basin, and they're everywhere in that system. But the big jacks were up high. Like it was, let's see, today is Thursday. So it was a couple days ago, and I went in this one bay, and it was like anywhere where there was a huge steep ledge, there was a pike on it. And if they were in the top 15 feet of the water column, they ate. And there was big walleyes up there, suspendos. So I was sort of geeking out over it. It's tough when you have like customers in the boat. You know, it's one thing. It's like how we fish now has become really challenging as a guide. So I would have guys in the boat, and I would see these suspendos, and they'd be at like 55 feet and on the move, and be like, all right, guys, see the tail wag, you know, cast ahead of them. And it's super hard. So they would miss, and I'd be like, I'd give them one shot. And then I would get on it. But on this one stretch on that ledge, I got a walleye over 30 inches. We got multiple pike over 36 inches. We saw a lake trout. I actually missed a lake trout that wasn't that deep. And so, you know, you see the big bubbles come up on the scope, and the thing swirls back around. And I set the hook, and I had him for a second, and then he went back down. Well, you know, like Kobe and a few of those other guys, they couldn't lay off. They couldn't resist that. I found lake trout. So Kobe's like, well, I'm going to come up and film some stuff. I want to get some photos for Rapala. Well, those guys just wanted to fish that area, you know. So they were in there all day yesterday. And I was like super jealous and sort of butthurt because I had like sort of customers in the boat. Even though I'm not getting paid up there, it's like, I got to take these guys fishing, and I have to I want to put them on fish. Like one of the dudes was from California, you know. That's the whole point, is like getting them fish. So I was up there, and those guys are just like freaking running them down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a guide. And then I had to actually cut out early because they wanted to catch some walleyes for shore lunch. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to leave these fish to like go catch eater fish. And sort of like goes against the grain when you're up there.
Where did you say you guys put in at, or where were you staying at?
So we went out of Totem Resort, which is in Sioux Narrows, and then we rip out to Wiley Point Lodge, which is on an island out there. It's kind of
Cool.
centrally located at Lake of the Woods. So straight south of Kenora, but you're not too far from Shoal Lake. You're 40 minutes from the angle. You're just right in the middle of everything. And that's what's cool about that location is you're right in the middle and you can kind of go any direction you want. It's been a few years since I've been in that area. So when we got out there, I was like, I wanted to discover like a lot of icons and places I caught fish in the past that I might not have fit. The last time I was at Wiley's, I think it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so there's little blue dots that I'm like, I don't even remember why that's there. I want to go look at it now, with forward facing sonar. And so I rip in there and I had more fun just like scanning like everything. I'd come in there and just wop, 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 like look around and be like, oh, okay, that's why I fished here. It was like a big rock transition into a bay. And what was cool about this year is like all the crayfish are molting. So everything was shallow. I think on day one or day two, I had to take Ron Scher out fishing. He's like, yeah, Ron Scher's in your boat. I'm like, oh, sweet. You get to fish with Ron Scher. He's like a legend, And so Ron jumped in my boat. We caught a bunch of walleyes for shore lunch. And then afterwards, he's like, hey, let's mix it up and go smallmouth fishing. I'm like, all in, So I went in these little back channels and I was just looking for like chunk rock and stuff. I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of chunk rock. There's a bunch of fish in there. Throw in there, walleye. Like I couldn't get Ron on smallmouth. There was so many walleyes in under 5 feet of water. It was insane. And there were nice ones up there. I mean, there was walleyes in the cabbage. They were in the chunk rock. And so that particular stretch, I kept on going down this rabbit hole of this channel thinking, okay, it just looks better. It looked like the further back I got in this bay, it looked more and more juicy for smallmouth because it was like this beautiful round rock, like everything you look for at Lake of the Woods. And it was all walleyes back there. And that whole stretch kind of around Wiley's, I never did find smallmouth for Ron. I have lots of spots that I fish up by Kenora, up by Shoal Lake, even north of where we're at Wiley's. I have hundreds of spots we could have hit. But since I was kind of staying close to shore lunch and just sort of discovering, I mean, there was current, there was rock, everything had the makings of it looking really good for smallmouth. We literally just like beat on the walleyes. And we never caught one smallmouth in that stretch. It's like insane. It was the only day that I didn't really get into the smallmouth. Every other day, like I found big packs of them.
That's sweet. I want to revisit just at the beginning, then we'll dive into some other stuff. But you need to get hired by a PR firm for Northern Pike because you keep saying jack, and I'm like, yeah, I want to catch a jack. Like that sounds sick. And then you're like pike, and I'm like, well, not as cool. But if I call it jack, yeah, I'm in. Like I like that.
So just guiding up in Canada, all the Canadians around there call them jacks, and like those big jacks are fun, man. They're and especially up there, they're so wide across the back and so thick. I mean, they have a ton of Cisco's to eat. They eat whatever they want, and minus the muskies that push them out of the shallows. In the summer they sort of roam. I go up there a lot in September, and those big pike move in the shallows. And prior to forward-facing sonar, I would throw big swim baits or jerk baits. Throwing giant jerk baits up there and just cracking those things. It's so much fun. I mean, you hit stretches where it's like pike after pike after pike, and you typically would think, well, I need to be in a back weedy bay, but up there, these things are Cisco eaters. They eat walleye, whatever. I mean, they relate to like big salty baits. So you find these things on big main lake points and current areas or whatever. Big windswept points, you go into these things and there'll be tons of pike lined up on those things. So like this time of year, we did pretty good on the jacks, but literally a month and a half from now, it gets so good in September up there for everything. I mean, smallmouth, walleyes, whatever, but the pike in particular in September is, if you want to go catch a bunch of giant pike without traveling that far, I mean, look at the map. Sioux Narrows is not that far. I mean, for me, where I live in northern Minnesota, it's like 4 hours for me to get there. It's not a big deal. Anywhere up on Lake of the Woods there, it's just prime pike fishing.
Yeah, for sure. That's super cool. Super cool.
Well, I would
you don't catch little ones. these are all big fish. I mean, if you catch them under 30, you're like, well, it's a snake. Most of them are 36, 38, 39, 40, 42. I mean, these are big fish.
That's sick.
I want to back things up, Tony, and this podcast is very loose. It's a lot of shenanigans, a lot of BS. That still all holds true, but I would really love to like back up and like, I would love not the elevator speech, the long elevator speech of the Tony Roach story. Like I want you to bring it back from, bring me along from like 8 years old on to when you were 13 years old fishing like some of your first tournaments on Mille Lacs. Like bring me the whole way if you can.
How much time do we have, fellas?
Bring it.
My whole family's from Brainerd, Cross Lake area. My grandma, my great grandma owned 2.5 miles of shoreline on Pelican Lake at one point. I mean, it's like my whole family roots are there. Mission Township, a bunch of my cousins, like everyone's from that area. My grandpa grew up there. Crosby, Iron, like that's, the roots of my family. So I grew up fishing all those lakes, Upper Mission, Pelican, all of the lakes in the Brainerd area. I actually lived, although over in Moose Lake, so not too far from where I live now. I lived on a lake river system. And so, we'd go visit my grandparents, which is not that far. It's less than, 45 minutes to an hour from where I live now to over there. But we would go over there, fish, and then I'd fish at home. And, really, when I was younger, I loved fishing for every species. It didn't matter what it is. And I think that's where I get sort of the multi-species, habits that I have now, is because I love chasing largemouth just as much as I do walleyes, just as much as I do smallmouth, pike, whatever. And living on a lake river system, I was able to walk up and down these rivers and catch smallmouth, walleyes, whatever. But then also I was also able to go out in the lake and navigate the lake and figure out, I can jig, I can pull crankbaits, I can cast for walleyes. And on my parents' shoreline, we lived on a real kind of rocky, sandy shoreline. And when the wind would blow in, we could catch walleyes off our dock. That's like the ultimate Minnesotan dream in northern Minnesota, right? To be able to catch walleyes off your dock. And so I had a little 14-foot boat, and my dad got me a little 10-horse when I was like 10 years old. And I used to actually, when the river was high, I'd run that thing up the river to the point where I got in really tight one time and I kind of hit a sandbar, and I acted like I hit it in reverse super hard, and I busted the linkage on it. So it was stuck in reverse. So I literally had to back troll like all the way home with my motor and had to go get it fixed. But I used to explore so much with that little 14-foot boat. And back then, I mean, I had a little tiny Minn Kota black and white trolling motor on the back, but that's sort of where I honed my skills. And back then, all I wanted to do was fish walleye tournaments. That was my goal. So by the age of 13, my dad actually entered us in the Terry's Boat Harbor tournament on Mille Lacs Lake. And back then it was like almost 10 grand first place.
Wow.
And so
what year would have that been? Do you know?
Probably 90, early 90s,
Sure.
Okay.
So early 90s. And so we entered in this tournament. It's a funny story because even though we didn't live that far from Mille Lacs, my dad was like, well, let's camp out. We'll camp out. We'll make a week of it. We're going to pre-fish every day and stay at home. But the night of the tournament, we're going to camp out. Well, back then we had a truck camper. What I'm talking about? It goes on the back of the truck, and then you can still fill your boat. Well, my dad didn't want to put that on because it was kind of a pain to put that on. So he's like, we had a topper at the time, and he's like, let's just throw an air mattress in the topper. We'll just crash in there. Well, he didn't take into account that the mosquitoes somehow could get in there, and we literally got eaten alive that night, like camping out, getting ready for the tournament. So we had no sleep. We slept in the cab of his truck. But we went out, we fished the tournament. We did all right, but I was 13. That was my first walleye tournament. And back then, those tournaments on Mille Lacs, I mean, it would be a minimum of 100, 120 boats. I think that very next year, I think it was 14 or 15, started entering bigger tournaments like the Wave Whacker tournament. That was a really big one back in the day. You used to have 200 boats in it. So a lot of these tournaments had 200 boats. The purses were up to like 70 grand on Mille Lacs for these local
Jeez.
tournaments. But,
So-
for me, it was a way to fish tournaments because you got to think back then. I mean, there was no student angler program. It was
Yeah.
me against a bunch of old dudes, and that was it. And so it was really my dad. My Uncle Gary obviously encouraged a lot of my fishing. My dad was on the Mr. Walleye team with him. They traveled across the country. They used to fish all the MWC tournaments back in the day. My dad fished a ton of different tournaments, but my dad was always like super supportive. Like when I went up to Lake of the Woods, for example, I went up to Lake of the Woods with like the most pimped out gear of any of the guides. Like I had all brand new rods and reels. And back then it was braided line, fire line. I had all the sweetest Northland tackle back then. Any jig you wanted, I mean, I had it. And so like of all my friends in high school or college, I mean, no one had fishing gear like I had. And it was because of my dad, my Uncle Gary. Power. I had all the power baits I wanted. I mean, it was like a kid in a candy store. But my dad always fed that passion because he knew how passionate I was about fishing, period. And that included ice fishing. One of the first like clam pop-up shelters, was like the poles with the tent that was like the suitcase one. Al Linder and my Uncle Gary used to go up lake trout fishing up in Canada every single year on trout opener. And they came back with this suitcase tent. And that was even before the Dave Gens fish trap type of flip over shelters. And they brought me back this suitcase shelter as a gift, like, hey, give this to Tony because he's fishing outside all the time. And back then I would literally drill a hole in front of my parents' house and I would fish all winter long. And I would drill holes up and down the shoreline looking for fish. Got involved with Strike Master augers at an early age. So I got a gas auger. So now I'm like, I have pimped out gear. I got gas augers. I got everything for year round. And I literally fished every single day that I could. Even, I played sports. So I worked around sports. So I'd get back done with practice and I would like go out to the fish house. Or if I wasn't playing sports that day, if I didn't have a game or whatever, I was fishing. And most of my friends in the summer, were playing summer baseball league, but I'm like, I'm not doing that, man. I want to fish. My dad just took me everywhere fishing, Canada, everywhere. Up until the point where, college hit and I was still fishing tournaments, but I had an opportunity to go up to Flag Island Resort. I went to St. Cloud State and I met this kid. It was like literally chance meeting. You're walking around with buddies and someone's got a fishing hat on, right? Well, I always had a fishing hat on. This dude's like, hey, where'd you get the Rapala hat? I was like, my dad works with Rapala. My Uncle Gary, they're sponsored by Rapala. He's like, what's your name? And I'm like, Tony Roach. He's like, you're kidding me. Tony like Roach. And so I got to talking to this guy. He's like, hey, my dad runs Flag Island Resort. My uncle owns it. I'm going up there in the fall to do cast and blasts. How'd you like to come up there? And I was like, I'll skip class, dude. I'm going up there. And so I ripped up there with them that fall. Just took one of the resort boats out, caught a bunch of walleye, just looked at the map. There wasn't even a GPS on these resort boats. I just looked at a map and I had a graph on the boat. I just went out there, found the humps, caught my limit of walleyes, came back in. I was in like within 45 minutes of my limit of walleyes. And his dad was like, dang. And then the next day he's like, hey, go back out and catch a few more fish. We're going to do a fish fry for these guys. So I went back out the next day, caught fish on a different hump, just kind of explored. And by the end of the weekend, he's like, hey, how'd you like to work up here next summer? So then I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like living the dream, like go work in Canada, And then from there, just sort of escalated. I did have what I call a real job for a couple of years. My wife was in school. We weren't married at the time, but I knew I wasn't going to be up at Lake of the Woods forever. It just, my life was down in northern Minnesota. And as much as I loved it up there, living on an island and, you're working for a resort, making $150 a day or whatever it was. I knew that wasn't going to last. Right. But I knew I wanted to build up my guide service and continue to fish tournaments and, be in fishing. I just didn't know how. But sort of at the end of college, I kind of had this like, oh man, my life might change quickly here because, maybe fishing's over for me. I got to get a real job, sort of become an adult. And so I sort of pushed that limit. I tried to stay in college as long as I could. I joke around like I was in college for 6 years. So I was literally the real life Van Wilder, but because it was because of fishing, fishing
Where
and
did you
hunting
go to
and
college?
St. Cloud State.
Okay.
What were you studying when you were there?
I wanted to be a teacher so I could fish. And so
Yeah.
I did all the student
Smart.
teaching. I hated it. I hated it though. I didn't hate the kids. I just hated doing it. And I was like, you start to look in the mirror like, oh, can I do this for 30 years?
Yeah.
Is this what I want to do? And I just remember thinking, I was like, all in the back of my mind, I was like, nope, I want to fish. And every time life sort of took a turn away from fishing, I was like, I got to get back to fishing somehow. I gotta, do well in a tournament or promote a guide service and do all this. Well, this is the early 2000s when all of this is unfolding for me. Well, just as things were ramping up, I was doing really well in tournaments, started my guide service. The economy started kind of taking a crap. Things started turning down. The PWT went away really quickly. That was sort of my dream, my next level dream, to just tour on the PWT. Don't even worry about guiding. That sort of went away. And I was like, okay, well, how do I build a business in fishing and not, have to do this real job that I have? And my real job inevitably was I ended up being a job superintendent for this home builder kind of near St. Cloud area and basically Annandale all the way down to like St. Michael, because my wife was going to school down in the cities. And
I live in Clearwater right now. So yeah, I'm sitting in Clearwater. So you just rode around my whole neck of the woods basically for everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I would manage these jobs and these new housing developments that were popping up all over there and Buffalo and kind of all over. Yeah. So I used to tow my boat to the jobs and fish Clearwater and what is it, Cedar, and there were some other lakes out there by Annandale that I absolutely loved back in the day. But so I'd fish around there. But I was building up a guide service, and so I was like, how do I get my name out there? Because back then, obviously, Facebook was just getting rolling. There wasn't the social media aspect of what we have today. Certainly not videos and reels and things you could shoot instantly and just start to get traction. And so I thought, okay, how can I reach sort of the demographic I'm after? And I just started donating trips. I was like, you know what? I'm going to work for free since I got a real job. I'm going to start donating guide trips to all these Ducks Unlimited banquets, to all these deer hunters associations, benefits of any type to just get my name out there. On top of it, I'm going to do anything I can for the sponsors that I was working with at the time. And at that time, it was I was just trying to get my foot in the door. I literally emailed because I was working with Mr. Walleye Specialties. My Uncle Gary had a fishing team back in the day, and I had just started on the fishing team. And with that fishing team, they promoted a bunch of different sponsors. Well, you know how it is in the fishing industry, and you're, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, and you email all of these pro staff managers, and it was like crickets, right? Didn't hear back from any of them, even though I'm on this team and I have an allowance of tackle that I get and things like that and different rods. They just didn't really want any part of it. The economy was starting to sink quite a bit. And
so this would have been around 2008 to 2010 ish time frame.
Yeah, I would say when because I joined Mr. Walleye Specialties in 2004, 5. Things were pretty good, and I was I was still fishing and building up my but working, and then building up my guide service. So yeah, 6, 7 is when it started kind of taking off, where I got my foot in the door with a couple different sponsors. But the reason I got my foot in the door, because I didn't email them and say, hey, I want a bunch of stuff. Look at me. I'm Tony Roach. I'm fishing these tournaments. I just, got 4 top 10s in the last, 5 tournaments. I didn't do that. I put together a resume, but when I emailed them, I just said, hey, do you need any help at any events, in-store events, sports shows, whatever. And a couple of them emailed me back. And I thought, well, if I get an opportunity to go work at a show, I can network, I can promote my guide service there with, consumers at trade shows or whatever it is. And I just looked at it for like a golden opportunity to kind of promote my business, but also just let people know who I am, not, kicking down doors, beating my chest saying, I'm doing really great, all this. People don't want to hear that. There's thousands and thousands of anglers trying to do what I was doing. And I just really wanted to, help any way I could, and even if that was, just sitting in a show booth or helping set up and tear down a show booth with rep groups or whatever, that's what I did. And, I went to so many different seminars and did different things and events that I never got paid for. I donated tons of trips, but I just kept on looking at it like, okay, this is me getting from point A to where I want to be at point B, C, D, whatever down the road. And, it sort of worked. Things started escalating for me. I ended up having an opportunity to, shoot with various people, like in Fisherman, did, some filming, did a bunch of filming with Midwest Outdoors. That was like sort of a chance meeting with those guys. They came out to film on Mille Lacs, and I was working with, Nature Vision, a camera company back then. And they had gone out on Mille Lacs with some other guides, and they really struck out. And my buddy Corey Schmidt, who is now like the chief editor of In Fisherman, he worked for Z-Man. He's been around the industry for a long time. Corey told Roger Cormier at Midwest Outdoors, hey, my buddy Tony Roach is on Mille Lacs just whacking walleyes right now. If you guys are striking out, he might be able to help you out. And they called me. I remember Roger called me at like 8:00 at night, and he's like, hey, we're trying to shoot a show. We really struck out. Corey said you're on fish. And I was like, yeah, I was getting like 30, 40 walleyes a day right now. And he's like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And it just so happened I had tomorrow off. It was in the winter. That back then I had a bigger summer following than I did a winter. And so I was like, I'll meet you at Mille Lacs tomorrow. So I met him at Mille Lacs. I had my wheeler and everything. I met him there. We kind of went out there. They started shooting. They were just kind of like, whatever, going through the motions. Because if this didn't work out, they were going to head back to the Twin Cities. Well, we pull up to the spot and I start ripping holes. And literally there's fish absolutely everywhere. I mean, every hole, like where you drop your 2D deucer down and it's like burner. And it was like, drop your spoon down, whack. I mean, before the camera guy even had a mic on me, I mean, I'm already catching them. And so then they're like, Roger's like, dang. And we filmed an unbelievable show. I ended up doing another perch show, ended up that summer shooting some stuff with Midwest Outdoors. I did some stuff with Rapala even way back then. And, I was trolling and doing things that people weren't doing on Mille Lacs, because I was kind of on the inside track of, like when the PWT came to Mille Lacs Lake in August, right? That's when, it was sort of a light bulb moment for all these live bait anglers that you can really do some damage on Mille Lacs Lake with crankbaits. And these guys started trolling crankbaits. Well, I just kind of stood in the shadows and, I heard all the stories and where they're catching them and how much lead and what speed they were getting them on and what crankbaits. And then I just started experimenting. That summer in August, not only was I getting them trolling, I was getting them casting crankbaits when the crayfish were molting. So I started doing fishing reports on my website and things just started building really quickly, even though the economy was taking a major crash. And so my first year of like full-time guiding was right before everything crashed in like 2008 time period. Okay. So 2006, I think, because this is my 20th year of full-time guiding, where I was like, hey, I'm going to quit my job. I literally walked into my boss's office and I said, hey, I'm giving my notice. I'll give you 6 months if you need it, but I'm quitting because I'm going fishing. And he kind of knew. I told him on the front end when I got hired, I said, hey, I sort of have a shelf life down here. Like, I'm not going to live down here the rest of my life. But it was sort of a pipe dream, because at that time that I ended up getting engaged to my wife and then married and then having a kid, my daughter. And so you have all those responsibilities but I'm still like trying to move forward and be a professional angler and be able to fish full time the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And when you have a wife, a kid, and you're going to just walk into your boss's office and quit, you better make sure that all your ducks are lined in a row, you know. And by meantime, it's the biggest crash we've had in our lifetimes with the economy. So, yeah, I just pulled the trigger and I was like, you know what? I just have to work as hard as I possibly can that I never have to look back. And I'm like, I always want to fish, whether it's guiding, you know, working for rep groups, promoting, doing TV stuff, writing. You know, I've written a bunch of different articles. I've done kind of everything in the podcast, radio interviews all over the country. I've just always tried to stay in fishing, but also I never wanted to get burned out by fishing. You know, a lot of guides in particular get super burned out.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted to get burned out. So it's like, how do I keep it, you know, the way I want to do it? And so how I kind of navigate that is like, I might spend, you know, let's say, especially back then, I'd spend 30 to 45 days straight on Mille Lacs, right? But when I get done fishing at the end of the day, I would go fishing with my kids. I would go bass fishing somewhere. I would do something away from Mille Lacs, away from walleyes, away from smallmouth, or even if I'm on Mille Lacs, if back then it was a 4-fish limit on Mille Lacs, if we got our limit of walleyes, I'd be like, hey, you guys want to go catch some smallmouth? And back then everybody was like, smallmouth, there's smallmouth out here. And I would take them into these reefs and have like the whole lake to myself. I mean, even up until 2-3 years before the Angler of the Year.
I was going to say a few years before Fighter, yeah.
A few years before that, I would have all these reefs to myself. I mean, absolutely. I remember a group from Iowa. They came up for, I would say, 5 years straight before they would actually let me take them smallmouth fishing. And I was like, you guys have to listen to me. Right now, there's so many bugs on the surface, and this topwater bite is so insane. You guys will have no idea. And I took them in there and remember throwing poppers with them. And from then on, they never came back to Mille Lacs walleye fishing. It just like ruined them. I remember them getting so many measurements because they wanted so many replicas that they were taken back to Iowa, like all of these pictures. And I've gotten to be really good friends with them. I actually went down there deer hunting and they got all the replicas up from the original. They had one of their buds like paints on a turkey feather. They did a really cool painting of this smallmouth, like it says Roach's Guide Service. It was smallmouth eating a swim bait, you know, and like I literally talked them into it back then. It was like, and it was so easy. You could throw whatever you wanted and you could catch fish. I mean, literally whatever you wanted. If you want to throw a swim bait, you'd crack them on a swim bait. You want to throw a tube, like there was no, you know, sort of finessing. Even if you saw the fish, you'd throw on them, they'd eat it. You know, it was not like it is today.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. Well, I think kind of what you were talking about, I think is so cool with it is you mentioned the like giving away guide trips to like Ducks Unlimited and stuff like that. And then like the free work and everything you're willing to do when you had a job. Like, I think that just resonates so hard for, I mean, kids or younger people trying to get in the industry or anything these days is like how far that goes. Cause I remember talking to Jay when like I'd been doing stuff in the industry part-time for, you know, a long time, but then 6 or 7 years ago, when I lost my job because of COVID, I was talking to Jay Siemens and I was, you know, how do I do this or whatever? And he was like, well, he said, go work for free for 2 months and it'll work out. And I was like, what do you mean work for free for 2 months? How am I going to pay my bills? And he said, people don't understand the value of free work. And I always remember that line from Jay because I've gone and even still to now, like I'll go do stuff just for people just to help them out or whatever. And it leads to so many networking events or networks, relationships, whatever it is. It just leads to so many things that you would never get. And yeah, that hit hard when you said that of like, you didn't ask companies for stuff, you ask them what you can do for them. And I think like that's just so different than I think a lot of people probably think about it.
Well, and I was excited to be there and, you know, and I figured if I could get there and network, I remember going to like the Northwest Sports Show for the first time. Right. And I was like, wow, you know, there's Al Linder and there's, oh man, there's Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston, like all the old guys, and I was like, man, I watch these guys on TV all the time. And that the MC of the deal was like Ron Shera, and my Uncle Gary's walk around, and then all these PWT pros. So I would just listen. I wouldn't even engage in conversation. I'd just listen to what they're talking about, because I was really intrigued to like what baits they were talking about, because back then, power baits were really huge, and they, coming on the scene, and we worked with that company back then for soft baits, and all the Rapala guys, just being around that Rapala booth, it was like, dang, I've arrived, and at the time I was working for Northland Tackle, and the Petersons, just being with the Petersons and listening to them talk about tackle, all of that stuff. Not only was I able to get my foot in the door, but I also learned a lot from those guys. And I've had I've been so fortunate to be able to work with all sorts of different companies in the industry and learn from some of the engineers, whether it be rod manufacturers, rod engineers, see how they build some of the finest rods on the planet, to building my own rods. I have my own signature series rods at one point. Now, obviously, working with rods and creating, the powers and actions that I want to see for like technique specific things. Also creating lures, whether it be ice lures or working on, different plastics or whatever. A lot of this goes all the way back to when I would sit at these meetings or just sit at the sports show and listen to these guys talk about, underspins and different type of cool baits they want to see. I think we live in such a cool world now, especially the soft plastics end of things. I mean, you look at the amount of soft plastics that we get to fish, whether we want to fish drop shot, whether we're on a jig, doesn't matter, swimming baits, obviously with forward facing sonar and all of that. You look back at even the early 2000s, how there was just a few companies making soft baits, and now the materials that we're using and everything we get to use is so much more lifelike and realistic. Back then it would be like almost a caricature compared to what we're fishing today. And it's just always intrigued me. I was just down at ICAST, and same thing. I still get that same feeling when you're walking around ICAST. I only had a few meetings down there. I had to be in the Rapala booth for a little bit, but I actually had an opportunity to walk around for, I'd say, half a day. And I would just walk around from booth to booth and just see what these people are, because every one of these booths typically represents someone's dream, right? Someone started with the dream, whether it's these giant corporate booths that are there or these tiny little booths of somebody creating some cool mount for our forward facing sonars or some connections for our batteries or sunglasses or clothing. It's someone's company. And so I just kind of swung around and just sort of took a really good hard look at each brand and what people are, sort of their story and their marketing to the products themselves. And I had fun just walking around and taking a look at all that and sort of taking that all in. And then not to mention, there's, sort of every personality in the fishing industry down there, bass anglers to saltwater to TV personalities. I went and sat in. They gave Bill Dance an award. I watched that. It's just sort of cool to be around that. And especially I've been on the water like every day this summer. So ICAST was like the first time I was off the water. So it's sort of ironic that I'm going to a fishing show to get off the water, to talk fishing with people and be on a flight with like everyone from Minnesota that we see all the time. Like I was walking through the flight, like high-fiving everybody, because it's like, hey guys, what's up? Like we're all going to Florida to talk to each other when we can.
We're all going to Florida in July to melt together.
The ironic part is like Minnesota was like just as hot as Florida.
Yeah, that was weird this year. I feel like that was crazy. Usually people obviously like maybe you don't want to go to ICAST because you're like, I can't go to Florida, when we've got such a short duration of beautiful Midwest summer, and it was like warmer here than it was there.
Exactly.
I was in a cabin on Rainy Lake then with pre-fishing for the Fort Francis, and we had one. It was there was like 3 different little cabins, but one cabin in the living room had like one of the single window ACs, and dude, that thing. That I am not jealous of that AC for how hard that thing worked for 3 or 4 days. That thing was just humming.
not to mention the smoke. I I went up to Vermilion right before we went to ICAST, and I could see the plume of smoke up there, and I was like, "Dang!" I was like, "That is a major fire." Called one of my buddies that's on the Hibbing Fire Department. I was like, "Dude," I was like, "What is burning?" He kind of gave me the whole skinny about Ely. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Went to ICAST, landed back in Minneapolis on Thursday, and I was like, "Whoa!" I couldn't believe it. My wife had told me that the smoke had got really bad at home here. And I just kept on driving north, and it got thicker and thicker and thicker. How was it up on Rainy? It had to be.
It was actually not a problem at all until day 2 of the tournament on Friday when we got an east wind. Otherwise, we were like northwest of it, so we never got anything. So I was getting all the pictures from everybody, and I was like, "Holy cow!" But then when the wind switched out of the east on day 2, I talked about it before, but like I've never been. So there's a thunderstorm at takeoff on day 2, and we got delayed an hour, but we were just sitting in line waiting to go. And there was so much lightning, but there was so much smoke that like you could barely feel the rain. It's kind of hard to explain. And when all the lightning went off, all it looked like was camera flashes. Like you never saw anything. It was just like flashes and haze. It was very, very, very strange. And then you could not tell when the storm got through other than there was no more flashing. So yeah, it was really bad that day, but then it switched again and blew out. But we were getting a lot of the stuff from everything that was going down. I think it was like up by Thunder Bay, basically, for those ones. But yeah, that was crazy at that time in the summer.
Well, I was worried when we went up to Sioux Narrows. I was like, I know there's fires in sort of southern Ontario and Minnesota fires, so I didn't know how it'd be. But Lake of the Woods, I mean, it was pretty much smoke free, anywhere you went. A little bit when we ripped up to Shoal Lake, but yeah, even being up at Lake of the Woods, like when I run that far and you run into so many different areas up at Lake of the Woods, you bump into smallmouth schools, right? And you're like, I just remember like back in the day thinking, because the KBI, even when I was guiding up there, was huge. And even when I bump into schools now, like when you start to get into like those 4-pounders and stuff, you're like, oh man, this would be a good spot for the KBI. Like I still think that in the back of my head, even though I'm never going to fish it. But, I'm always looking for those fish. I remember guiding on Flag. I used to go into the Angle Inlet, and it's still Canada there. But you used to have to get your licenses from Wendigo Island. So you'd walk down the dock and you'd have to get all your American customers' licenses there. They'd have to do it by hand back then. So every group that came, we'd bring them, go to the docks at Wendigo. That's where you got our licenses. And I remember walking down the dock, and there was a big fish basket like on the dock, where people put their fish in. And I look over, I'm like, what is that thing in there? It looked like a carp, And I lifted up the basket. I put my hand down in there and I pulled it out, and it was about an 8-pound largemouth. And I was
really?
like, oh,
way.
Heck. And so I walk in there, and there's a bunch of kids down there. And I asked the lady, I said, hey, where did that big bass come from, that largemouth? And like, oh, the kids caught it, in the Angle Inlet. And I'm like, what? And, if you ever fish around there, there's lots of grass and stuff. And it's really like, I've always thought it's like, this looks like really good frog country. And so I like tracked down the kids. I'm like, who caught this bass? I'm like yelling around, and the kids are running around. And one of the kids answered. He's like, yeah, we caught it up in the Angle. He's like, on a spinnerbait. I'm like, oh my gosh. So every night after I got done guiding for like 2 to 3 weeks straight, I was like, I think I can fish the Minnesota side of this thing in the Angle Inlet and catch the Minnesota state record. And at the time, I didn't even know what the Ontario record is, but I guarantee that was sitting in that basket that day.
100%,
when I pulled that thing up,
yeah,
hands down, 8-pound largemouth, easy, right? And
Fish
so
is probably 30 years old.
yeah, so I every day after work, me and another guy, this Aaron Clevin, we would go bass fishing, and we'd throw frogs, we'd throw buzz baits at night, we'd throw spinner baits. We did everything we can around those islands to catch big ones, and we caught some giants. But it's like really low density, but big fish. And so I remember the first one I caught was like 5.5, 6 pounds. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they do exist, And so then where I caught that, there was a bunch of rice, and there was a lot of vegetation, the stalling stick grass and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I got to find more of that around here. So I started targeting other spots. The next big one I got was on a frog. I caught it on a scum frog, and it was pushing 7 pounds. And I brought it back to Flag Island to weigh it because, you know, back then I didn't have a good enough digital scale, but they had a real scale at the, you know, at the dock on Flag at the marina. They had a scale. So I brought that thing back there alive in the live well and threw it up there, and it was a 7 pounder. So we threw it in the minnow tank because the guys are like, we got to take, and it was almost dark at this point when we weighed it. The guys are like, we got to get pictures of this thing, right? Threw it in the minnow tank, let it sit in the minnow tank. Next morning, got up, snapped a couple pictures. I threw it, I just dumped it in at the dock, let it go right there. And, you know, to this day, I'm like, never seen the picture of that thing. Whoever took that picture, I would love to see the picture of me holding this big largemouth. But I spent like 2 or 3 weeks of the summer, like every night that was decent weather, going and trying to catch the state record largemouth. Like I was like convinced that I could catch it there. And, you know, since, I mean, that was 20 some years, you know, over 20 years ago now, you know, I've talked to Gussie about it. He's just like, yeah, you know, it's just like, they don't exist anymore, you know, but they've got to be around there somewhere. There's still got to be some fish. You know, the forage was right. And, you know, obviously when they get that big, other than a muskie, I don't know what else would bother them. They're giant, big fish. You know, the biggest I'd ever seen in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota.
That's crazy.
Sure.
Oh,
Up in Lake of the Woods.
They're probably
That's
so
sick.
old, dude. They're probably so old.
Well, and I always see that in those KBI photos too, because that's like that's a bucket list tournament for me. Like I want to go fish that one really bad. And I always see like that tournament compared to like Fort, you never see largemouth. Anything on Rainy, someone weighed a largemouth on day 3 of Fort Francis this year, and it was a 2.5 pounder that probably got the loudest cheer out of any fish the whole weekend. But you see those KBI photos and you see these big smallmouth and everything, and then there's one team that's got like 2 big green ones, and you're just like, where did you crawl to that you found a couple of those? And there's a few of those Canadian teams that just got them like hidden in their back pocket, and they don't tell anybody what little bay or cut they pulled into, and there's like 10, 20 of them in there, you know?
Well, when you're ripping up like that east side of Lake of the Woods, even, and you see those back bays with all the lily pads and stuff, you're like, you know, there's green bass up in there somewhere. You know, there has to be. It just looks too juicy every time you drive by. And even like going back into Shoal Lake on the far western side of Lake of the Woods, you go through this area, it's like Ash Rapids and then the Labyrinth, right? And there's all these little back bays, and they're kind of lily paddy grass, bulrush sort of bays, and it looks like a largemouth could live there. And if one exists there, it's, you know, it's going to be a giant. And I never get an opportunity to like go back in there because Shoal Lake is so big, and when you get back in there, I want to catch big walleyes, big pike, there's tons of smallmouth back in there. So like you end up just, you know, I'm not going to go look for green bass up there. It's just I know the numbers aren't great, and I take my hat off to the guys. Obviously it's some of the locals, but whoever finds those fish spent a ton of time like researching these back bays and putting some serious miles on. Because put it this way, like it's a 1-hour boat ride from Wiley up to Shoal Lake, for example. But then from Wiley back to Sioux Narrows, where we stayed, it's another, you know, 45 minutes to an hour. So that just gives you this perspective. Like if you're going to search all these bays, you could spend a whole lifetime and never touch these back bays looking for these type of fish, you know. And even the walleye spots and the humps and the points, like I literally will put my trolling motor down and just scan as fast as I can all around these areas, looking out in the basin, kind of shooting up shallow. You know, a lot of the humps aren't marked exactly. I'm looking for, you know, the kind of that Canadian shield rock that goes to that really good chunk rock at times. Yesterday, like last night, we pulled in this bay, and you could see where this creek ran in. I'm like, oh, that's got to be just like, there's got to be cabbage there. And it literally went from like Canadian shield to like perfect cabbage. That's where I saw the muskie up in 4 feet, but there was stacks of walleyes on the edge of that break. And it's just cool stuff like that you find that you just have to like fish to find it.
Yeah, I love fishing those Canadian Shield lakes and stuff like that up there, because it is like there's a whole art to it with forward-facing sonar, but then you also have the visual aspect of like you can just run around the lake and look at shorelines and look at stuff, and all of a sudden, after like 4 miles, you come around a corner and you're like, "Oop, they're for sure somewhere around here. I don't know where, but this looks right." and you just sit down and you start fishing around and you'll catch them. So yeah, it's so cool up there.
Well, and the problem is like, okay, where do you start? Because I fished Lake of the Woods, I fished Menaki, you go to Lac Seul, you go to Eagle Lake. I mean, there's just, you don't have to go further than Rainy Lake. I mean, there's so many opportunities to fish that aren't that far. People think, oh, you got going up to Canada. Not that far, even from the Twin Cities. I mean, today so on my way back yesterday, I was having this weird glitchy electrical issue on my boat. I'm like, oh no, I got like a 27-mile run in all the way back there. Like, I need a GPS to get back down that same route. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare. Like, I don't want to be on my phone, like trying to navigate this thing at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was having this weird glitchy issue. I spent last night like pulling apart panels in my boat. And like, I hate electrical problems, right? No one wants an electrical problem in their boat, especially when they're on the middle of Lake of the Woods. And so I'm like, great, I can't figure this out. There's no connections that are loose. The fuses are fine. No blown breakers. It was just this weird little gremlin deal. I was like, forget it. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. If my graphs are working, I'm going to rip to Sioux Narrows, get to Totem, and then I'm going to literally drive to St. Cloud and have them look at my boat. So I ripped to Sioux Narrows, had no issues whatsoever. I'm like, oh, thank the Lord, I made it back there, without hitting a rock or something, because I literally have to guide tomorrow. Like, I can't have a boat that's down. And I drove to St. Cloud. You would think, oh man, you're in the middle of Canada, driving all the way down to St. Cloud. Man, that must have taken forever. No, it was less than 5 hours, like 4 hours and 4 hours and 3/4. So to get into like epic fishing of all sorts of different species, and you only have to go 4 hours. I mean, that's why I always say we're truly blessed to live in Minnesota, because we have so many resources around us. Oh, by the way, if we want to go to the Dakotas, they're right there. If we want to go to Canada, it's right there. If I want to fish the Great Lakes, like next week, I'm going lake trout fishing on Lake Superior. Oh, by the way, it's right there. We're not that far from Green Bay, Sturgeon Bay. We're kind of in a really cool part of the United States. I know it gets super cold in the winter, but all of us love to ice fish. And so I always feel like I was born in the right place for like who I am.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally
I
agree.
feel that. I wanted to ask too. So with you talking about like kind of your history getting into walleye fishing and everything, you and I ran into each other briefly at Mille Lacs this year for the Champions Tour event, and you were chatting with Dane, and we kind of different NWT guys we have on here. We chat with Brett Carlson a lot about this, but like with where tournament walleye fishing and everything is right now, it seems like, well, there's a lot of young kids getting into it and starting to like do really well and everything. What do you kind of see on that side of things on the walleye tournament world? Like, what would you like to see to kind of maybe get things ripping again, where there's 200 boats on Mille Lacs or there's 100 boats here? You get what I mean? Like, it feels like kind of there was a bit of a lull almost in the walleye tournament world, and it seems like it's kind of coming back around.
Definitely coming back around. It's more exciting. I mean, I know with forward-facing sonar, it's such a hot button topic. Some people hate it, some people love it, some people say it's the end of the world. Some people say it's the greatest thing ever. I love it. I love technology. I always have. When I first started guiding and fishing tournaments, especially guiding, all the old guys are like, wow, you wouldn't be in this spot if it weren't for a map chip,
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I got a map chip, so I don't care.
Cool.
And then side imaging came out, and like, that's how I look at forward-facing sonar.
Yeah.
Like, I've embraced it since the beginning. First time I dropped that pole down and I saw fish and I saw the power of that tool, and then how fun it was to catch fish, I'm hooked. And, it's been 5-6 years now of using forward-facing sonar everywhere I go. And I think it's sort of rejuvenated a lot of people, and it's brought a lot of younger people into the sport. I mean, look at these guys that are killing it right now. I mean, they're younger guys that, have time on their hands. They can go travel and put their forward-facing sonar down and go discover some really cool fishing. And that's what I love about technology is, like I say it all the time, I'm fishing the entire body of water now. Like, I'm sure you guys are the same way.
Yeah.
Used to go and structure fish all the time and beat banks and power fish. Like, now I can fish wherever I want. And so, like, I laugh because, like Target Walleye right now, like they pump out a ton of stuff about jerk baits. And I always laugh because, like, I have always loved jerk bait fishing. And that was just one of my power fishing tools where I could take a jerk bait and run a bank and catch smallmouth and walleyes like crazy, right? And now all these walleye guys are like, man, throwing a jerk bait, it's the greatest thing in the world, which it is. It's, at times walleyes can't resist it. But where I honed my skills on jerkbait fishing, it was because I had to power fish because I wanted to learn that body of water. And, whether it's casting jerkbaits or whatever, I always, either fishing fast or trolling was the only way I could cover water to really learn that body of water. And I just always found jerkbaits to be like this incredibly powerful tool, especially for walleyes. And so to see swimming minnows, to see, the jig crawler, whatever they're catching them on, I think for me to answer your question, to like bring this thing next level, I would love to see like artificial only tournaments.
Hell yeah.
I'd love to
Add
see
another one to our list. Yeah. We didn't even have to prompt that.
No, artificial only tournaments. And then on top of it, I do love that, classic bass format where like every fish counts. And part of that is the guide in me, but also part of it is like, okay, I don't know if the best angler in the field is the guy that had to run down 5 bites, or is it the guy that ran down a pile of them? Like the ones that I see that are like catch, record, release, where they're putting up, hundreds of points or hundreds of inches. You knew that dude killed them. And like, for me as a guide and for me as an angler, like for me to go out fishing, yeah, I want to get big fish. Like Lake of the Woods, I wanted to target some big fish, but I want to go put a smackdown on them. And someone that can put a lot of fish in the boat, in just coming from me, that's what I want to see. I think that's exciting, that catch, record, release. And I don't want to catch flack for this, but like, I don't like the weight tournaments anymore. I really don't. I think bringing these fish up to scales, I don't like it as a guide. I don't like seeing it on Mille Lacs. Obviously they've gone away from it in Minnesota a lot just because of the slot. But you go out to Lake Erie, and I realize that resource is different. And you're probably not impacting that resource, but that's sort of a real outlier compared to all these other resources where you're hauling a 30-inch fish all day long in the back of your live well, beating the crap out of it, hauling it wherever you're going, and then weighing it. Same with like even smallmouth bass. Like this year, right, on Mille Lacs Lake, for example, they just had that tournament not too long ago out of, and I won't name the resort, but you guys know where it was at. It was 90 degrees, and it was a weight tournament, and they brought all these bass to shore, and it was a partner tournament. And, for me to see people throw, 20, 21 inch, 22 inch smallmouth in their live well and have them sloshing around all day in 90-degree water and then weigh them in and then dump them back in the harbor, like it makes me sick to my stomach. And I'm a real conservationist, and I'm not anti-tournament by any means, but I just think if we can get to the point where we can have catch, record, release, even if it's a weight tournament, because I realize that, you lose a lot by just measuring fish, right?
Yeah.
For the audience and people. But if you could have ambassadors in the boat and they're weighing each one of your fish, I do like the classic bat format where, there's some penalties involved, some things that are more than just fishing. For me, that would be the ultimate tournament, whether that drives a ton of people to a particular tournament trail, but I like that format. And that's why I wanted to do the podcast, with Dane and talk about it, because I think you could build something really cool within that realm. And as a matter of fact, after I interviewed him, I'm like, dang, I wish I would have fished that tournament. I mean, there wasn't that many guys. The purse was freaking great, and I was on a killer catch, record, release bite. You know what I mean? And so afterwards, I was like, dang, I should have just fished that tournament. I should have blown off everything. But it was
you were in
interview.
Canada. We just announced another one on Gull Lake, so you can sign up for that one in September.
I saw that. And Gull is a fun like catch, record, release lake as well. I've always enjoyed fishing Gull. I remember talking to a lot of my buddies that are bass heads, because for years I'd fished like the Camp Confidence tournament and stuff, and I always want to do well, even if it's a charity tournament. And I'd always talk to my bass head buddies to see where they're catching the walleyes, because I knew if they were catching them, they were up in the weeds. They were catching big ones. They weren't catching these smaller ones out on the edge with minnows and stuff. I wanted to catch them throwing baits, whether it be jerk baits or swim baits or whatever. And I think I fished that Camp Confidence tournament for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And I won it like 7 out of the 8 years on big fish. And it was everything I fished was under 10 feet of water. Most of the fish were on the inside edge of the weed line. But I would talk to like Brandon Cizik or Dan Quinn or any of my buddies and be like, hey, where are you finding walleyes, or where are you seeing them? And be like, oh, over here, I'm catching them up shallow. Because I'm like, if the bass guys are getting them, they're getting good ones. And so I like Gull Lake because it fishes a lot different. Some fish are really, really shallow, but yet some guys can go out on the deep humps and jig wrap or pull chubs or whatever and catch them that way. There's suspendos all over the lake. It's a cool lake. I think that's a cool spot to have that tournament. Hopefully the weather gets cool, because if you get cooler weather in September, it seems like the last few years in September it's been a little bit warmer. If you get cooler temps in September, I think you could see some really giant weights for Gull Lake, especially that catch, record, release format.
One thing I wanted to piggyback on too about I think the Champions Tour is onto something too with catch, record, release with walleyes. And it's because I'm not a walleye tournament guy, but there's always that aspect in walleye tournaments where it's not like they're calling up to their best 5. You still got to play that game of did you get your unders? You know what I mean? Or did you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where in Champions Tour, it's kind of who banged him the hardest, who absolutely just banged him the hardest, not oh, he didn't have an under or he never got his over. This is just who beat him the hardest, and they get the title. It's cool.
It resonated with me too, because I think it's been talked about a lot, but forward-facing sonar has probably changed walleye fishing more than it's changed maybe any other species. Probably along with crappie a bit too, but walleye significantly with the amount we know about them now. And I think it was Bob Nitty at weigh-in, and maybe Charlie McGivern said it too. But they were like, this was fun because I got to throw at all of them.
Yeah.
I got to catch all of them rather than just going, because that was just really different for me watching it, being a bass guy, so we run around and we hit 100 spots, in a bass tournament. You're boom, 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 one here, one on this log, one on this rock pile or whatever. Well, walleye tournaments, a lot of guys, it seems like these walleyes are almost just a giant herd is in a certain part of a lake. So a lot of those boats are over there and they're not really fishing individual spots that much. It's more of they're all kind of in this giant area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fish are there too. So they, rather than being oh, that's probably only a 3-pounder, that's probably only a 4-pounder. Oh, there's a 7-pounder. I'll throw at that one. They get to be 2-pounder, 2-pounder, 4-pounder, 5-pounder, 2-pounder, and just start catching them. And yeah, I think it's super cool. I think a lot of guys really liked the catch, weigh, release format, and I'm excited for seeing it on the walleye side. Like you said, Tony, I would love to see artificials eventually for walleye tournaments, just because I think we've seen so much innovation on the bass side with bass tackle. I want to see what gets made in the walleye world, because there's got to be a koiki out there for walleyes,
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there's some JDM trawler. It's just
that's all we talked about at ICAST. Is all right, there's got to be an urchin bait for walleyes, and someone's going to discover it here shortly. And I like what you said, Adam, and the fact that every fish counts. In walleye tournaments in the past, even before forward-facing sonar, if you hooked up on one and it wasn't the right size, you're just wow, wench it in, get it off, and then you're to the next fish. And with forward-facing sonar, like you said, there's pods and packs of them I'm not even throwing out. I'm looking for the right one. And so, I just fished a tournament out in Ottertail with my son a couple weeks ago, and same thing. We went by thousands of walleyes to throw at the ones we wanted. And, it would just make it a lot more fun of a tournament if you're just windmilling them one after another and every fish counts. I think it would be really cool. And if it's on the right fishery where, yeah, you might be windmilling them, but you want to be windmilling on the right ones. You know what I mean? So there's certainly lakes that I can think of all around Minnesota, but especially in the Midwest, where the bite's really good. But you gotta, let's say if it's a catch, record, release tournament, you're going to catch so many that you better be throwing on the right ones, not the packs of 1 and 2 pounders, but the packs of 4, 5, and 6 pounders. Look at Lake of the Woods, for example. If you did that format on Lake of the Woods, can you imagine just the overall weights that would come in? It would be through the roof.
It'd be crazy.
It would be insane. And if you had the right combination of the right location with the right purse, with the right format. And I'm even going as far as saying, and I know some people would probably say, no, don't say that, especially walleye guys. But if you did artificials only, I think that would be like ultimate of like who can track them down, who can put up giant numbers. And I think it'd be really cool. And if you could do it in a sense where it could be real time too, like the ambassador in the boat is constantly, video feeding, website or whatever you got shaking. So the viewers can be part of it. I think it'd be neat because I don't really geek out over tournaments that much. I check leaderboards, of buddies and bass tournaments. I check leaderboards of my friends that are fishing walleye tournaments. Like certainly the NWT right now, I check in to see how some of my buddies are doing, but I don't really sit and watch the live feeds or anything. I'm guiding every day. I'm fishing, I'm doing other things. But I think to get the people that are engaged at the office, if I'm sitting in an office, I would be watching that all the time. So
yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, I got one more thing I want to dive into, Tony. If you need to go for your guide trip tomorrow, you totally can, but I don't think we could have you on here and not ask, how have you enjoyed doing the YouTube TV show the last few years, getting to do Dialed In Angling and everything? I know you filmed I saw Rem out with you a little bit last year and everything. He's a buddy of ours.
That was a cool shoot. That was a really cool piece.
Yeah, so that was super cool to see. But yeah, how's that been, getting into that side of things? I know you've kind of dabbled in everything in the industry, but kind of now having your own little show.
It was cool. For years, like I said, I've done, everything from Midwest Outdoors to Angling Buzz to In Fisherman, you name it. Like I've done a lot of TV, but never, sort of where they're like, hey, what do you want to see? And, what I like about the Dialed In Angling and the producers is they let me do my own thing. They don't tell me like, nope, you can't go there. You can't go there. Nope, we don't want to talk about that. Like, they're just like, go catch fish.
That's cool.
And, I think for me, the learning curve on all of that, and you guys do it as well. And you guys shoot a ton of great content. I watch all your stuff. I watch everyone's reels. What I love about today's angler, right? Like myself, you guys, even my son, is we get home and, after a hard day of fishing or whatever you got going on, and, put the kids to bed or whatever you got going on in your life, right? You pop your phone open and just start scrolling through some reels and videos and seeing cool stuff and experiences that you want to do. But it also makes you a better angler. Like I've always said this my whole life. Anglers learn from other anglers. And when I go saltwater fishing, I love saltwater fishing. I love snook fishing. I like red fishing. I, fish snook, whatever. Whenever I go with captains, I never tell them that I'm a charter captain. I don't tell them a darn thing about me. I just go fishing with them and let them do their thing. And you learn so much by observing someone else, by not putting your own piece on it. Now, being on the backside of the camera where I'm showcasing like how I'm fishing, I try to let everything kind of unfold for itself. I'm sure it's like you guys, you go into a scenario thinking, okay, this is how I want to do it. These are the baits I want to do it. These are how I want to find the fish. Oh, we want to crack some big ones, and, and all that. And sometimes it's just not the way it happens. And so I think for me, the learning curve side of it is like, I'm getting better at letting things just unfold as they are. Yeah, I'll have a solid game plan going into a walleye episode or lake trout or whatever. But sometimes it's like finding the fish and letting it unfold, letting that story kind of tell itself is just as important. Like last year, for example, and I know it didn't pan out the way I wanted to, but I was supposed to go up to basically way up north in Canada, and a storm hit, right? You guys know, you shoot a lot of ice fishing content, and the weather in the winter just is like can crush your dreams, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
And
Sobe almost got blew out of South Dakota.
Yeah, we've had it happen many times sitting in a hotel. Like you're supposed to film, you were on a killer bite the day before. It was bluebird sky and it was awesome fishing. The camera guy shows up and everything hits the fan. So last year we were gonna rush up into Canada. Had this really unbelievable bite. I wanted to fish. It was like a bucket list type of trip, really. But just thought we could hammer out a bunch of content, and just thought, man, we're going to get so much done. We're going to have so much for socials. We're going to have all this stuff, right? And hit a storm, like a literally ground blizzard storm. But it was sort of centralized to the Dakotas and northern Minnesota. So I'm like, you know what? If we leave at 2 a.m, I think we can get ahead of this storm and literally cross over into Manitoba and be out of here, and maybe even north of Winnipeg by the time this thing hits, right? So, all right, let's do it. So we leave at like 1:30 in the morning. I get to Fargo, and it's getting hairy, right? I mean, it's getting scary, and it's, only a few hours away from my house. Like, all right, let's just gas up in Fargo and let's just keep going north. We can still see if we can get above the border, we can get above this weather, right? And as the light's coming up, it's getting worse and worse to the point where we can't even see the blacktop. We're 30 miles from the border. It's the scariest driving I've ever had in my life. A semi passed us, and we're going about 10 miles an hour with a big white trailer behind us, and I can't even see the blacktop at any given point. Like, it's not like blowing away where you can see it a little bit. Like, it's just white. And my buddy has the window open. He's like, white line, white line, white line, white line, white line. That's what he's saying, white line, the whole time. Because I told him, I said, I'm keeping my tires on the white line. So he's like, white line, white line, white line. He's got his head out the window in a blizzard. And we're looking at the GPS, and the next exit is 1 mile. And he's like, white line, white line, white line. We get all the way to the exit. I can't even see the exit. I just turned based on the GPS. I almost hit the exit sign. And I get up the on-ramp, and when you get above the weather, we could kind of see, because it was snowing, but it was the wind.
It was the wind blowing it,
Yeah, but I could kind of see. I couldn't see the blacktop or anything, but I was just like grateful we got above it. And there's a gas station there. You know how in North Dakota, like most exits don't have a gas station.
Yeah, they don't.
So we like totally
so lucky.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we totally lucked out. And I was like, I don't care if there's a gas station or not. I just need to get off this road, because I'm like literally thinking we're going to get run over by a semi. And so we get off the exit. I pull in. Again, following GPS, I can't see anything. I almost run into the stop sign. So I'm like, oh, and I turn, and I almost run right into the side of the gas station. You can't see it. It's so weird how that whiteout, like I've been in whiteouts in the Dakotas, but nothing like this. And so I'm like kind of navigating, and like I get around to where a gas pump is, and I pull up to a gas pump, and you can't even see the gas station from the gas pump. But I'm just like, I take my seatbelt off, and I'm like, this is crazy, right? We're obviously not making it to Canada. I kind of felt a little bit guilty that I put these guys in this situation that we could beat it, because, based on my weather app and everything I was seeing, like we were in line to beat this thing, and we did not beat it. We sat at a gas pump for 23 hours basically, but we were at a gas pump. We were safe. The gas station had Taco John's. I never want to eat Taco John's again in my life. We had Taco John's.
Was it the same worker there the whole 23 hours you were there? Because he also couldn't leave.
Yeah, the funny part about it is, like, we go in there to kind of get away from the storm and just kind of get out of the truck, and it was a Sunday, so football was on in the Taco John's. So we hang out with the rest of these people that barely made it, and everyone's white knuckle that's in there, And we're eating Taco John's, watching football, but like every half hour, they're like, courtesy check in the bathrooms or something. And we're like, what's a courtesy check? And we start to get like the nuances of like hanging out at a gas station truck stop, and the same people are there all the time, right? Same workers. And then there's these locals that would hang out and then leave. And then where are they going in the snow? So you cannot see. Is that, I don't know if there was a trailer park nearby or what, but we're stuck there. And so kind of the whole thing got derailed. So I'm like, we just need to start filming some of this, making the best of it. And then, having a network of friends is always key, right? When you want to film something, whether it's cool fishing content, things your buddies want to see. I'm sure you all have the same network of buddies that you talk to all the time on the phone, on the morning. Like, I know on the way to work, I talk to different guide buddies, whether it be, like Ram or a bunch of my buddies that are guides. We chat in the mornings and stuff. And I literally sat at the gas station, like calling up my buddies saying, hey, we're stuck here. Doesn't look like we're going to get out of here anytime. We're going to lose our deadline from when we can shoot, because our format is pretty quick turnover, right? We shoot Sunday, Monday, they air it that weekend. And so we're on a short deadline. So I just started calling around. I'm like, okay, well, what can we do that's sort of fresh content that we haven't done this year, but also, kind of be on a good bite? And, started calling my buddies in northern Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, even thought about ripping to Lake Winnipeg, but we had already kind of been there earlier that year. And I was like, North Dakota, Devil's Lake, I know. Called Alex Reslock, and he's like, the bite's been kind of grindy, but we're getting some big pike, big jacks. So I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, they're super shallow, like getting some giants. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. He's like, well, the best bite is on hot dogs. And I'm like, really? And so that sort of piqued my interest. So, you end up like, turning lemons into lemonade. We sat at a truck stop for 24 hours, but we were safe. As soon as they opened the highway, we got on the highway and just ripped over to Devil's Lake and like met up with a bunch of my good buddies from Devil's Lake. So like had one of the best times just obviously hanging with those guys. And then, we shot a kind of killer episode in the shallows, but like I was still kind of flustered to the point where I didn't get to showcase like if you go back and watch the footage, my hands are so bloody from handling pike in that episode, just shooting that thing.
Yeah.
Because, you're not going to show every hammer handle pike, but we literally had to run back to the grocery store and get more hot dogs because we caught so many pike on hot dogs in less than 4 feet of water that if I had to like go back and reshoot that thing, I would have like broke that down a lot better of like how we got truck as a stuck job, how dire it was to like literally like speeding up every single shot of every pike that we caught on a hot dog. Cause we had to catch 40, 50, 60 pike all on hot dogs. We caught one on a frozen minnow. Everything hit the hot dogs. We tried ripping wraps and jerking bait. We tried big hair jigs and different things, plastics. They wouldn't touch it. The hot dogs were like going off like crazy to the point where it was becoming laughable, But that storyline kind of told itself, even though I wanted to jig up a 40-inch pike, we were catching them with hot dogs. And I should have just, really kind of accentuated the fact that we're catching our hot dogs. And that was a true thing. We didn't make any of that stuff up. If you go, you guys get it all the time, but the comments on there, people are like, yeah, right. What a crock of crap. What a lie. This was a legit thing. Like,
yeah.
Have you ever caught the pike in the Dakotas on hot dogs? Dates back for me going to the pothole lakes in South Dakota with a bunch of farmers that, they don't have access to sucker minnows like we do in Minnesota. So they always used hot dogs and it was just a normal thing. And
it's a staple.
It's
an
like,
old school
it's a staple. Yeah. And so going out to Devil's Lake, but to catch the quality pike like we were catching on hot dogs was something to see. And, that's the part of filming where, I continually want to get better at just letting the storyline play out the way it is, not, the way I want to see it. But also going back to that original comment of like anglers learn from other anglers. I love shooting video because whether it's, the struggles of finding fish in that episode or how I drilled a bunch of holes to find the fish to, the techniques that we used, how it is with ice fishing. It can be like the peaks of peaks and the valleys of valleys, right? And especially if you're trying to film content, you guys know all too well. And so I guess the only frustration in my mind with filming ice fishing is, I have these sort of storylines built up in my head. That's something that I want to showcase really bad because I was able to do it before and it didn't happen. But then other times, I hit the nail right on the head and you end up, landing on a concept or a fishing area or a lake where you're like, wow, we actually wailed on them. And that's the fun, satisfying part to me. Like even being at Woodland Resort at Devil's Lake and, having pizza and a few drinks with the guys, afterwards, after the pike episode and just kind of, catching up with all the people in that area. That's what I love. And high five because we got a cool, hot dog episode done, even though, 48 hours ago, we thought we were going to be dead on the highway, so that's kind of the long and short of what I like about filming. We're doing a lot of open water content starting next year. And so be able to expand on it. I'm excited to get out of the realm of just shooting ice fishing as much as I love shooting ice content, it's a love-hate thing. So you guys know.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot more work than people think it is.
Yeah. And with the production end of things come out and look really good, but there's times where you just want to beat your head against the wall. Even with all the technology we have and everything we have, all the useful tools, and you get on the best bite, and then Mother Nature decides to do something completely different.
Totally. Yeah, nothing beats no matter how good the tech is, it doesn't beat cold. Cold wins.
And especially like you guys know, I mean, you guys like being outside too. I love being outside in the winter and just really kind of spread my wings and moving around. And I like exploring as much in the winter as I do the summer. I know it's a lot more work, but I do love that exploratory aspect of what we do for a living. And I hate when there's bad weather where you can't be outside. I don't mind sitting in a shelter. It's really not that. Like, I'll flip the shelter over. I'll sit in a hard house or whatever. It's not that I don't like sitting in there. It's like when I get there, I want to explore everything before I, decide to sit in a shelter.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that and they take that away from you, it sort of sucks to me. Like, it kind of takes the fun out of it. And it also kind of limits the potential that I feel like you can showcase in, an episode.
Yeah, for sure. I totally feel that. And like the exploratory part, I know Sobe and I have talked about it a lot, but I think what we love about ice fishing is like, I think lakes freeze over, and like I am so much more willing to adventure, it seems like, in the winter, like with snowmobiles or ATVs, or like going to a lake in the middle of nowhere that has a terrible ramp because I can't get my boat into it anyways. Like, you get to go on all these crazy adventures. And I think, I have tournament stories and cool bass stories and stuff from the open water, but I have way more cool adventure stories in the middle of nowhere in the winter. And it just seems like there's just this different art of storytelling, running into bites and experiences that you get to experience in the winter. Like you talked about with sitting at a gas station for 23 hours before you go somewhere. Like, that doesn't happen in the summer. Like, only that stuff happens in the terrible winters. So yeah, I think it's something, you can take for granted at points in time, but it's like, hey, it was a cool story.
It is. And you know what? It makes for good viewing. I enjoy watching your guys' videos. I enjoy watching a lot of different videos from a lot of people. I got tons of Canadian buddies, and I enjoy watching their stuff, whether it's, serious technical, like specific things they're doing to, just things like I went up and filmed with Jamie Bruce. And I mean, that was a crazy adventure that I wasn't anticipating.
I watched that. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that we were going to, and we didn't even showcase half the stuff we actually did, almost sunk a sled, didn't film that. Jamie obviously had his chest camera going when that happened. But it got pretty bucky because no one had really cut trails into where we were going. And, Jamie loves that stuff. And I had a great time fishing with him. He's a great guy. I love exploring as much as him. But on the same token, I was like, man, we didn't have to go through that much effort. Like, we could have just, jumped over this hill and went and caught these fish. And, but he wanted to explore, and he wanted to go into some back lakes that he hadn't been to. And I'm cool with that because I like exploring. Like you said, it's probably lakes that he can never get a boat to, but no one's cut a trail and he's got someone coming. So let's go do it, and he brought a winch, and I was like, he's like, how adventurous do you want to get? And I was like, well, as long as we have the right tools, I guess I'm up for anything. And we had a blast. We had an absolute blast. It's just too bad that, in our format that we shoot, that I couldn't showcase everything that we did because, it shows us cutting sticks and stuff and winching up, but it was a grind. I mean, it took us a long time to get back to some of these lakes, and it was fun. I liked exploring. You get back in there, you start exploring, you start catching lake trout. We caught some walleyes in a spot. We just literally stopped for 15 minutes, caught a few walleyes in a spot, and then went lake trout fishing on a different lake. And you can't do that in the summer, right? To be in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours north of where Jamie lives, and just basically throw a dart at a dartboard and go catch cool fish and have a cool experience.
Tony, I think it'd be super cool if on some of these shoots you just bought a cell phone off of Amazon, doesn't have a phone plan. It's just a side piece film phone. And while the production crew's putting together the piece that's going to go out that next weekend, when stuff like this comes up, if you just pulled it out and broke down the situation, or a couple like behind
I
the
want
scenes,
a rough cut Tony
a
Roach
little
walk.
inside baseball stuff of just some of the shenanigans, or just something that happened, or yeah, Jamie just sunk his sled, or I've had Taco John's now 8 times in the past 23 hours, like stuff like that, and maybe some of that leaked out onto the channel, like that'd be so cool. And I think it'd be a really awesome kind of duet to what you guys already put on. It'd be really sweet.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm always so focused on the task because, we're up against deadlines all the time, right? And so I'm always so focused on the task, like, something breaks, something happens, like, let's just get it fixed. We got to get to fishing. We need to get this content. And I need to do a better job of just like living in the moment. And I think as we get into season 4 here, we're going to do more of that. I like the experience behind it too, even just the travel there. Like, you guys know how many times you come over a hill and the sun's coming up over a lake and you're like, oh my gosh, like I get to do this for a living. And I love that stuff. And even the things that, are sort of the painful part to getting to that point. I think showcasing that obviously for the viewer and behind the scenes, we try to talk about it like on our podcast a little bit, but yeah, when you live in that moment, it's obviously something that just makes for good media.
Yeah, and I think I can go ahead quick, so and then you got her. But like what you're saying with those moments, or like kind of really learning to accept them, like I feel that because I mean when we first started like doing the Chronicles, like this huge goal of catching these giant fish in the cities, and like you said, you go out with a plan. You're like, this is how it's going to go. This is how we're going to catch them. We know these fish. This is how it goes. And I think kind of like where our stuff kind of turned, and like where I think I grew as a storyteller, I would say, and obviously still learning a ton. But I from filming the Champions Tour, filming tournament fishing, like you are filming an event that nobody knows how it's going to end. So your job is to just film everything. And like, as it's happening, observe what is happening, be able to realize what is happening, and be like 10 minutes ahead of what's going to happen so that you're able to capture that emotion and that moment and that whole thing. And once I was doing that with the Champions Tour, I kind of brought it over to the Chronicles in the sense of like with Boots now and other camera guys we've had, I bounce between filming and they film. But we're like filming these updates and they're like, dude, we just did an update or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but we have no idea what's about to happen right now. So I don't know what's going to happen next. And then like something happens and they look and they're like, well, what happens next? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. And you're like, you're just living in that story. So you just keep filming it and updating it. And you're like, I don't know how I'm going to put it together, but this is going to be cool. And I think, when you're able to take a step back and go from this is the bite I want to film to realizing like I'm in this story that I can't wait to watch, it turns into like this electric thing. You get what I'm saying? It's just like a little bit different of a mind shift, I think.
Totally.
I listened to a podcast not too long ago, and it was with Mike Rowe, and he was talking about how he basically started as a host and was like impersonating a host, but then actually became a host. You know what I mean? And that evolution. And I listened to that on a podcast when I was heading down to ICAST, and it made a lot of sense, like not comparing myself to Mike Rowe, but just listening to his story and how, he sort of, his career sort of, was going up, but then plateaued, but then really took off when he became a good storyteller, and people want to hear that story and that full story and that full background. And still trying to navigate that myself. I love hearing other people's stories. That's why I like watching videos that you produce. I like watching videos others produce. Like I said, all sorts of different types, whether it be the background story of how they got there or how they're actually catching them, to even tournament clips and reels of people catching fish and certain techniques. And I don't know, I kind of take it all in. I think a lot of people maybe feel overwhelmed with the amount of content that's out there, but I think it's great. I think, it's funny how you can go down a wormhole with the algorithms that we have nowadays, where you watch one specific video on, swimming a minnow, and 3 hours later, you're like, wow, I got to put my phone down and go to bed. I've been watching so many videos on, this specific thing. And I geek out over certain fishing techniques, for example, I love catching lake trout. Doesn't matter if it's summer, winter, but I'm so busy guiding and doing other things that I don't get to go lake trout fishing as much as I want. So when I get free time with my son, Lake Superior is not too far from our house. We can rip up to Canada. We have lots of places we can go lake trout fishing. I want to go lake trout fishing, and not just lake trout fishing, jigging for lake trout, right? Yeah. And now obviously with forward facing contents, I start watching lake trout videos, and then next thing you know, I'm just like all in. Like I can't stop thinking about it. I go to work the next day, and I got customers in the boat, but I'm checking like wind direction on Lake Superior, what the waves are going to do, and I'm like literally doing that right now, because in a couple of days we're going to go lake trout fishing, and I just can't wait. I'm getting all my bait set out, my lures, and like planning this trip. Geeking out over maps. That's another thing that I do a lot of. Like, I'm sure you guys do too. Like I sit on my phone and scroll over maps. Like, oh, I didn't know that hump was there. Even now, after coming back from Lake of the Woods, even the waters I fished, I'll go back on that map and look and be like, okay, yep, we fished that. Oh, I should have hit that bay, because there's so much water up there. And I think that's just all part of it. That's what drives me as an angler. That's why I never get sick of fishing. I wake up in the morning, hit start on the coffee pot, and like I can't wait to get after it. But then I'm also looking forward to some of the things that I want to do personally, just with my son. My son loves fishing, but my whole family likes fishing. But my son in particular is like me, like he sent me videos of his live scope. He's got a little Arc Lab mount that he puts on his 14-foot boat or on the back of our pontoon. And he's sending me videos of catching walleyes. And I'm in the middle of Lake of the Woods, like watching his video. Love that stuff. I think it's so cool. It's how you connect with people. And, we all have the fish head disease. And so it's super cool to like see that in my son.
That's
because I can relate. I mean, we all went through it. We still have it. My Uncle Gary said a long time ago when I was little, he's like, hey, you got the fishing disease. And I was like, fishing disease? He's like, yeah, it's like the bug, you can't shake it, and look at him. He's going to be 89 years old. When you go fishing with him, he's literally like the Energizer Bunny. He wants to fish. He's the last one to come off the water. He's the first one at the dock. And I just hope that I can have a career even half of what he had, or be able to fish as long as he has. I just feel fortunate to be able to fish like every day. I mean, I literally, to have a 20-year career so far of fishing and doing what I love, it just feels like a dream.
Yeah, that's incredible. Sobe, did you have anything else?
Yeah. Do you have time for one more question? I know we got to get you out of here. You've given
us.
Yeah,
it's all right. Yeah, that's good. It's therapy.
Seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
God, I could pick your brain or ask you a million different questions. Like, especially your timeline and your career of like when you started and kind of everything you've seen and how involved you've been in and all different aspects of kind of like the industry in general and the culture. Like, is there one thing that stands out to you that you're like really proud to be a part of, whether that's a media project or a bait release or a certain tournament, or maybe just a certain time of Mille Lacs Lake, or just something? Like, you've been in a lot of different aspects of what makes up kind of the fishing industry and the culture. Is there one thing that stands out that you're like, I was a part of this, and I really think that was a big deal for even you personally?
I think there's a lot of milestones for me where something happened, and it just sort of connected the dots to the next. Like, like I said in the beginning, when I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to fish for a living. But when you're, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and you're telling your teachers like, hey, I'm going to be a professional fisherman, and they're like, good luck, kid. There's no way you can do that. So my dad always said, you got to connect the dots. It's got to go from A to B to C to D, and you got to keep going, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm going to go fishing and put everything, and you got to have a game plan. And so there was significant milestones that happened that took me to the next level. Like I said, the Midwest Outdoors thing, I was like, boom, then I was on the next level. It was getting my foot in at a sports show, and then I met this person, and then I networked with this person, and then ended up just going fishing with them, or I met a writer, and then I went to a writer's event, and then it just sort of escalated to that, where then all of a sudden the next thing you know, I'm developing lures. They're like, what do you want to see? What kind of baits do you want to see? And I drew out on napkins, like, this is what I want to see. These are the type of baits I want to see. These are the materials I want to use. Then it was rods. It was like, well, I like this rod, but it's, it doesn't have the right power and action. It's too, parabolic, or it doesn't have the right tip, or it's not long enough. When I started designing ice rods, for example, everybody's fishing with these tiny little ice rods. I went up to Lake Winnipeg, and all my Canadian buddies had created these longer poles, and they were sticking them with these perfect balanced sticks. And I came back to the US, and I'm like, I'm not fishing a 27, 28, even a 30-inch rod anymore. I want a 40, I want a 42, I want a 38-inch rod. I want the right power and action. I'm sick of fishing with junk in the winter and the most, the greatest rods you can think of in the summer. Why don't we create something that's killer for the winter? Why are we fishing with, these cheap combos? Well, let's expand. There's tons of ice anglers like us that want quality products. We fish quality products in the summer. Why don't we have quality stuff in the winter? And so that in itself, getting that threshold and designing some of that stuff and getting to that level where, I had the freedom to work with some of the best rod manufacturers on the planet, and some of the best rod engineers, and to really nail down, powers and actions for the type of fishing I was doing, both summer and winter. That was another, point where I was like, yeah, this is really cool. I love doing this. It's, when I get a whole pile of rods sent to me, whether it be open water rods or ice rods, and I'm just going to test them, and I'm testing them on the right way to fish, whether it be, a rip and wrap rod in the summer, or a jig and wrap rod, or it's a type of rod for pan fishing, or whatever, a tungsten rod, whatever it may be. But getting that bundle of rods and then going through them and nailing them down, be like, nope, this isn't right. This is right. Oh, I love that handle. I love that reel seat. This blank is super light. These guides are killer for what we're doing. Putting all that together, designing rods, and then also designing baits, being able to, work with companies like Rapala, where you go back and their engineers are like, what do you want to see? Lay out exactly what I want to see. And then boom, we start working on products, making sure everything is right, whether it be the right split rings, the right hook sizes, the right size spoon, or whatever it may be, and just really nailing that down. And then, just kind of, that's another thing that I enjoy doing. I'm sure, like you guys, when you're fishing, you're like, man, I could make this better. I haven't designed anything when it comes to like electronic mounts and stuff. But right now, you look at the whole realm of like electronic mounts, poles, things that we're using on our trolling motors, all of this stuff. That's another thing that I'd be like, man, I would change this. I would change this. I would do a better job on this. I would make this more of a conversion that I can use for ice fishing or open water. Even though I don't use a lot of my ice fishing stuff in that manner, there's a lot of other people that do. And all of that stuff, I think that gets the gears going when you're fishing. And even if I'm not designing it for a company, I'm always thinking like, that's sort of why I went around and just basically went to every single booth that I cast, because I'm like, gosh, there's some people doing some really cool stuff like behind the scenes, and small companies in the fishing world that all think like that, And so for me, to answer your question, Sobi, I mean, I don't think it's one thing that happened. It's just been accumulation of things where, I came home and high-fived with my kids and gave my wife a big hug. Like, you're not going to believe who I took fishing today, or you're not going to believe, look at this. This is the first Tony Roach series rod, or this is the bait I designed with this company. And like, all of those things were really cool, because it was all the sweat equity put into it. It wasn't just like I drew it on a napkin, it showed up, and then we were done. It's always that, how the market works and how these companies work. Like right now, sitting with a few of these companies that I cast, they're working on products for 2029, and so companies are thinking ahead. Obviously this year was the the urchin bait down
the
at
koi
ICAST.
key, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The CEO, whatever.
I hope someone makes a hook.
Yeah,
I would love a hook.
That's the next thing. So, but everybody's working towards the future,
Yeah.
and so it's never like in the now. And yeah, I mean, the milestones for me really are coming home and, you know, talking to my wife about things that happened, or my kids, or my mom and dad, and just being like, man, I can't believe this happened, or this is happening. Or, you know, you walk into Shields on an end cap and everything you worked on is right there, and there's a picture of you holding the walleye. Like, pretty cool. That stuff is rewarding to me, because it wasn't just getting the box in the mail. It was getting the box in the mail and then working on all that stuff, going out, fishing those baits, looking at them, breaking them down, making sure that that's exactly what you need, or dropping it down an ice hole, putting an underwater camera and really scrutinizing that bait to see the powers in action, see how fish react to it. You know, how the right rod you're using with that particular bait to make it, you know, to get everything out of that thing. And yeah, I love that stuff. And I still love exploring and creating, you know. Same can be said on the media side of things, like creating content. Like, I watch other people's content. I like to create my own, and I like to do it my own way. You know, where I'm more on the teaching side of things, even though, you know, I probably didn't want to become a teacher back in college. I still have that sort of teaching mindset. And so that's where Dialed In Angling sort of came around, was like, hey, I want to teach people how to catch fish. And it's all different types of people, you know. I think the circles that we run in, you know, we tend, as far as when I'm shooting content, I tend to think on this level, but you also have to talk to the audience that's like just trying to get into it. So I try to break down every aspect I can, so that the viewer, when they're watching it, can go out on their own and be like, yeah, I can get that bait with that line, that rod, and try to duplicate that and catch a bunch of fish with my kids and have fun doing it. And so those sort of things are what I strive to. And every chapter and every kind of next letter that I do, or every challenge, I go head on and I go full on, and I try to do it, you know, to the point where I'm sure you guys are the same way. I wake up sometimes 2-3 in the morning and I grab my phone and I jot down a note, because I just had a dream about that particular spot, or I start to connect the dots, like, man, I caught fish on that spot. I could do the same thing over here, or this different lake, you know. Or I watched a particular YouTube video, and these guys were catching them with a certain style of bait. I don't even know where they were fishing, but I'm like, man, that opens up a whole new round for me. And then, you know, I probably do more experimenting in the summer. I really do, where I have all rods on deck. But in the winter, I probably do more searching, I guess. Like, you know, to Adam's point, like, I try more lakes in the winter, just because of Adam's point, where these lakes might not be accessible in the summer. So I tend to explore more lakes in the winter, but I try more techniques in the summer. But also in the summer, I find bites for the winter. And I'm sure you guys too, where you stumble on something, you're like, wow, I had no idea that there's giant crappies in this lake, and I'm walleye fishing here, you know. Or vice versa, you're pan fishing a lake and you're like, whoa, what's that big bright shiner out there? Throw a mooch minnow out there and it's a 30-inch walleye, and you're like, man, I want to come back here and shoot some ice content, you know. So I'm always exploring, I'm always thinking about that stuff, and I just hope that I never stop and sort of plateau. If I do and it becomes boring and I don't like my job, maybe I'll become a teacher or work construction again, or do something.
I don't think you'll be a teacher, Tony.
I've
listened to you for the last hour and a half.
Yeah, I just never want to have it not be fun. I love fishing, and I think, you know, sort of my leaping pad right now is seeing my son get into this, and like, even my daughter and my whole family, we love fishing, you know. But see my son, when he's, you know, sending me snaps of, like, you know, him on the graph, like swimming a minnow on a corner of a pontoon with a clamp that he put on a live scope, like, that's a proud dad moment in my world, anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
most dads like want to see their kids hit a home run. I want to see my kid throw 60 feet and nail a walleye right in the head with a mooch minnow and catch a 30-inch walleye on the back of a pontoon. Cool stuff.
That's
Dang.
awesome. That is
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank
Well,
you
Tony,
so much.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we could, like you said earlier, we could probably do this for like 6 to 10 hours, but you do have to guide tomorrow. So
Yeah, my
we
wife
will,
is probably like, I gotta go to bed. She's got to work tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Love what you guys do. I love your podcast. I think it's super cool. I think we all get to work in an industry that is full of cool people. We just up at Wiley Point there, and we were all sitting around after dinner, and I was like, what a cool deal. Like everyone here is like passionate about fishing. They love the sport. Same thing when we go to the St. Paul Ice Show. Same thing, you go to Minneapolis Show, you go down to ICAST. I rarely meet anybody in the fishing industry that isn't just like super cool and fun to talk to, even though certain people might have an aspect of like the marine side of things or the saltwater, or maybe they're really into fly fishing. Doesn't matter. They're anglers and we all bond as a result of it. I mean, I go to the grocery store and I bump into people all the time, and all we do is talk fishing. And I love it because you can tell right away in their eyes, they're like, they either have a fishing story to tell, or they want to talk fishing. And man, that's what I love about what I do for a living, is the fact that I get to engage with tons of people that are just as passionate about it.
that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Tony, we'll have to have you back on again sometime. But yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we can let you get out there and go beat down on those
Yeah, good
Mille
luck
Lacs
tomorrow.
walleyes.
Good luck
Oh,
tomorrow.
I can't. I'm excited.
And good luck
to get
on
back
your
to
lake
Lac.
trout trip with your son. That's going to be epic. And I'm sure, like you said, proud dad moment where like you've experienced so many different bites and so many different cool things, and now you almost you probably get to relive those where you're like, oh, dude, wait till we go lake trout fishing, or wait till we do this, or wait till you try this spot, or wait till you try the angle. Wait, it's going to be, yeah, you're going to do a million of those things all over again. It's going to feel probably even
Well,
better.
and I'm sure like you guys are the same way. Like, when I'm looking at fish or tracking a fish, I don't have to catch it. Like, and especially lake trout, like I could sit there. It's kind of like turkey hunting in the spring. Like I can call for you and you can kill the birds. I don't care because I call them in. Same thing when it comes to lake trout fishing. Like I'll let him catch every single one as long as I hunt him down. I'll be like, boom, right there, dude. Drop down 20 feet, drop down. Like I get just as much excitement out of seeing that. So, hey man, I love seeing all your stuff. Thank you so much for having me on. Look forward to the content that you guys produce as well. I think both you guys do a great job. So appreciate you having me on, and yeah, best of luck to all you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tony.
Get him out of here.
All
Get
right.
him to bed.
Yeah. He's going to bed. He's got to go to bed. All right. That was wonderful, Sobe.
Dang, dude. So I love having guests as legendary as Tony, obviously, because he has just a lifetime of experience and knowledge and stories in every sector that make up fishing. But I also hate it because I feel like there's so much more we should talk about and ask. And I'm going to go to bed tonight and think of 14 different questions of like, dude, I should have hit him with that. I should have hit him with that. Like, I want to know about this. I want to know, like, yeah, it's a double-edged sword to it, but I feel grateful that, he gave us so much time and he came on here. Like, it's Tony Roach, dude. He's a legend. He has taught thousands of people inside and outside of the boat about fishing, and then just has such a, famous career.
You know what I learned tonight, Sobe? I don't know a human being besides Spock that maybe enjoys fishing more than Tony Roach does. And it might be a tight race between Spock and Tony. That man loves fishing, dude. He loves it. It's so cool.
And it's crazy, like, how obviously he's done so much, but even at the age of, I think, 47 now, like, he is still such a sponge, dude. Like, he wants to learn from other guides. He inserts himself into every single booth at ICAST just to kind of pick the brains of all different aspects of the industry of like, what are you doing with this? What's your gadget for this live scope mount? What are you thinking here? Like, he's a sponge, dude. He's just collecting this information and his gears are spinning and turning. Like, you can just see it. Like, it's so cool. Dang. It's really
so cool. That was an awesome interview. So I mean, we don't really have much else we need to cover here. So we're 2 hours in. That went longer than we thought. Tony gave us so much of his time. That was friggin' awesome, man. Yeah, shout out to all of you who've made it this far.
Yeah. And if you
are
guys
all
want
the
to
best.
get in the boat with Tony, dude, you could just Google his name and find a way to hopefully book him if he's not completely booked out for however long. Please go follow his socials, follow their YouTube channel, Dialed in Angling. Like, they put together great productions, great pieces. And it's cool. They're going to do some open water stuff. Like, follow along Tony's career, because, you know, even though he's had a long and thriving career so far, like, you can just see it in that dude's face. Like, he's not
Not close to done. Not even close. Yeah, let him know. Comment on his stuff when we post on social. Let him know you enjoyed him being on PTB. We'll get him back. I could see him and Pink getting in like a story off, just going back and forth. It could be epic. Like, they just start telling stories and talking, and the last man survives. It might be like a 48-hour stream, dude.
We'll do that on New Year's with Tony. Like,
yeah. Maybe that'll be the new New Year's stream. We'll just bring Tony on and be like, all right, Tony, here we go. That was great. What a legend, dude. That was awesome. So thank you, everybody, for listening this long. Please remember, rate, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. It helps us tremendously. We appreciate you all, and we will see you on the next one.
Peace.